So May of 1787 to September of 1787, basically that summer in Philadelphia, 55 delegates representing the people of the United States meet. The people is in quotation marks here because the 55 delegates are all white, all male, all of relative affluence, which is not necessarily something we should specifically criticize early America for. It's something that is systemic of Western civilization at the time, and in many instances to this day still an issue. But that's just the plain fact. They were all white, they were all men, they were all relatively well off. 21 of them had been veterans of the Revolution. Many of them had served in intercolonial organizations like the Continental Congress. They were aware of the need to unify all the states around some sort of centralized government. How that government would look would be a area of debate and contention. But Jefferson is not there. He is in France as an ambassador. Adams is an ambassador in England. But Madison is there. Washington, Hamilton. Franklin is there too, Benjamin Franklin. This is only about 4 years before he dies. So he's elderly. Madison is probably the most important of the framers of our early government. He is one of the primary authors of the Constitution. He basically writes the Bill of Rights, which is added in 1791 as a favor to Jefferson. Jefferson and he are corresponding. So let's focus on two elements of the Constitution: federalism and checks and balances. Federalism is the relationship between the states and the Fed. What can the federal government do and what can it not do? What are the states allowed to do? This is a point of contention. The whole Constitution really is a point of contention. We still argue over it. It's less than 4,000 words, right? And it's over 200 years old. So there are elements of it that are vague. There are elements of it that are contradictory. It's kind of like the Bible. So people have been debating over the meaning of it, same as the Bible or any other, or the Quran or the Torah. People have been debating over it since it was written. But federalism, the important thing to know is that it deals with the relationship between the federal government and the states as far as what the Fed can do and what the states can do, what the Fed can do and can't do, and what the states can do, right? Checks and balances. This is within the federal government, ensuring that there are multiple branches of government in which each branch provides a check on the abuse of power of the other. That might seem vague or not make sense. I'm not sure, but I will clarify. We have three branches in the federal government, right? We have the legislature, the Congress. There's the House and the Senate. They write laws. Theoretically, they will write the laws and vote on them. And if they pass, they go to the president, right? They don't immediately become a law. The president has to review those bills. And if the president agrees with it, they will sign it. If they don't, they will veto it, right? So the president has a check on the power of Congress. However, if the president vetoes a bill and it goes back to Congress, if Congress can pass that same bill with a 2/3 majority, right? Not just 50 plus one, not just more than half, but 2/3 majority, it will become a law over the president's veto. So the president can check Congress's authority. Congress, though, if they have enough votes, can turn around and check the president's authority. They can also impeach the president for high crimes and misdemeanors if they want to. Even if Congress passes a law with enough votes, even if the president signs it into law, it is still, the Supreme Court still has the right to rule it unconstitutional, which really comes into effect not with the first Supreme Court justice, who is John Jay, but a justice named James Marshall in the early 19th century, who really ushers in the concept of judicial review, right? So that's checks and balances. So there is a federal government, and there are still state governments, ensuring that there's some sort of delineation of the rights of each one and the relationship they have with each other, but also a check on the abuse of power within the federal government. There is a cushion or a buffer between the people, the masses, and the government. I'll explain why. When this Constitution is ratified, right, you have Congress, you have the Senate, you have the House, you have the President, you have the Supreme Court. Today, how many of those groups do we get to vote on? Citizens. We directly vote for President. We directly vote for our senators. We directly vote for the House of Representatives. We do not elect Supreme Court justices. They're appointed by the President, who we vote for. In 1787, when this is written, actually, and goes into effect in 1789, the people who are citizens, primarily adult white men who own property, but citizens who vote, only have a direct vote over their House of Representatives member. The senators are not chosen by the people by direct vote. The senators are usually chosen by state legislatures. So the people vote for their legislatures, but then those guys go off and choose the senator. The president is chosen by an electoral college, which we still have an electoral college, and there are still technically electors. It's very complicated, but basically in California, for example, there are 54 electoral votes. But whoever wins in a presidential election, the people's vote in California, gets all those electoral votes, right? There aren't actually but in the 1780s, there were actually electors who got together and decided on who that state would choose for to be their president, right? So like Virginia, people might get to vote for the electors, or usually they were also chosen by the state legislature, right? So you get to vote for the state legislature maybe, but that governing body gets together and they choose the senators, they choose the electors who go on to choose the president, right? So you're only voting for the House of Representatives at the time. Eventually, constitutional amendment will allow for the direct election of senators by the people. And before that, actually, the actual votes of people will start to be counted within each state, popular vote. The concept of the popular vote, as we know it, where you count the actual number of votes, did not really exist back then. If you look at election maps, it's not until 1824 that you actually see states beginning to count the actual individual votes of citizens in the presidential election.